those kinds of ideas you have about the way the world really is that usually you never think about. That's your actual worldview. And he enumerates 5 categories for a worldview: theology, ontology, epistemology, axiology, and anthropology. Did you get that?
Yeah,
No, I'm just trying.
already written down.
Once you guys are done with this, I'll go to the next slide. I got to mess around with the new guy. What's that?
I said I missed the first one, all the ones after that.
Okay.
It was theism, atheism, and what?
Yeah, the lecture? Yeah, theism, atheism, and pantheism. Yeah, I should write that down.
Did you say cross?
Theism, atheism, and pantheism. We'll get into what those 3 beliefs are and all this kind of stuff in just a minute. But worldview is a big deal. Understanding how different worldviews work will help you to make sense of what that person says, because they're coming from a certain perspective on these different subjects. So this is actually going to really help you to understand people from different worldviews. Oh, you're taking their shot now. Everybody smile. This will probably be archived for all of history. So it's up to David. Do you want them to pretend to be learning?
Oh, yes, please.
All right. Hand on the chin, perhaps, or, like, what? Somebody raise their hand? No, just kidding.
Thank you.
All right. So everybody got this right here? That's an important definition. All right. Now, this is going to help you actually understand what it's talking about. These are my own little questions to explain these things. But essentially, Meister argues we should break worldview into these 5 categories. Okay? They are theology, ontology, epistemology, axiology, and anthropology. And if you can remember all those words, you are going to be the best conversation party or best conversation partner at the next party you go to, because you're going to be like, what's your axiology? And the person's going to be like, my what? I only have 2 axles on my car. And you'll be like, no, what is the basis for morality? And they'll be like, oh, my axiology. Right. So anyhow, write these down, and then what we're going to do is lay it all out for you. You know, there are thousands of religions in the world today, and it's kind of like always been like that, or at least for a long time it's been that way. And so it's impossible for me in an apologetics class to go through all the different religions and show you what they believe and how to, interact with people of that faith. It's just not enough time. So that's why this worldview approach is going to be really helpful at dividing everything out into these 3 main categories. All right. I should start writing my chart down on the board while I made this awesome chart, and it's not even in your textbook, so eat your heart out, Chad Meister. It's funny, he doesn't know me, but I know him.
Hopefully not nicknamed my
Yeah, right? Ouch. I'm glad I brought him from home to be here, to be my supporter, to really have my back.
Oh no, I'm not gonna follow up.
That would be worse for you, because you would think
My reflex is safe. Do you want us to write it like that? Oh, okay.
This is going to be a table.
no, you're doing that first one.
Okay. I have to put on sunglasses then. Which would really mean so. Only my actual glasses. What if you grow? It doesn't matter.
This is going to be awesome. You guys are going to have a grasp that you're going to be like, I never thought I would understand all of it so well because of this way of thinking about it. It's that good, in my opinion.
Am I gonna have to write on the wall?
Yep.
I didn't do well in art, by the way. So, it's, some wavy lines.
One time I was denied recess because I was bad in art. they thought I was faking it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, listen, I just can't draw. Okay. Yeah, I told the teacher.
All right, so we'll probably do the rest in blue. There we go. All right, so these are different paradigms or aspects of a worldview, okay? Theology, ontology, epistemology, axiology, anthropology. What is theology? It's basically your belief in God or gods. What's your ontology? It's your belief in reality. What is the universe? Like specifically, what's it made of? What kind of universe is it? Epistemology is your understanding or your theory of knowledge. How do you know things? Where does knowledge come from? Axiology pertains to ethics or morals. How do you live the good life? Anthropology relates to humankind. Like, what are humans? What are humans? Yes, that's what I meant to say. All right, so we have these three major worldviews. We have atheism, pantheism, theism. These worldviews fundamentally conflict with each other. There's no way to harmonize them together. But under each category, you might find multiple subcategories. For example, under theism, you have Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Under pantheism, you have Buddhism, some forms of Hinduism, some other religions. Under atheism, you might have the agnostics or, well, pretty much just agnostics and atheists. It's not too much variety there. All right, so what does an atheist believe about theology? About God? No God, right? No. Let me think about this. I'm going to put it over here. No God. Well, actually, we'll put it like this. No gods. Right? Capital, lowercase, whatever. They don't believe in any of it. No supernatural. That's even better. No supernatural. So that's another way of saying the natural realm is all there is. What was that famous cosmologist? He said the universe is all there. Yeah, Carl Sagan. The universe is all there was, all there is, and all there ever will be. Something like that.
Did you say cosmologist?
Yeah.
That's not
No.
like yeah,
No.
you said
That's what I thought.
Cosmologist is a physicist that studies the universe. Yeah. Astrophysicist, maybe? All right. What does an atheism believe about ontology or reality? Well, they believe in the theory or the idea called naturalism, which is that the natural world is all there is a closed system. There are no external beings. They believe it came about by the Big Bang plus evolution. And that's where we got our world from. They believe about knowledge that the way you come about or come to knowledge is through what method? Scientific method. Scientific method is a very slow, laborious way of getting knowledge, by the way. It's where you come up with a theory, a hypothesis, and then you design experiments to validate or invalidate the theory, and then you refine your theory based on the experiments until you get a theory that seems to cohere with reality. And so that's the scientific method. You all do it all the time. Like, if do you guys make coffee? You know, like sometimes you make coffee and it's no good, and you're like, something went wrong there. Put too much coffee, didn't put enough water, you know, the half and half was bad, or this creamer's no good, or whatever, you know, and then you adjust next time. You know, like, this is just a natural way of going about things, scientific method. I mean, obviously it's more systematized. Okay, axiology. What do atheists believe about morals, morality? Yeah. Typically, the phrase we'll see is socially constructed. Or determined by evolution. All right? Socially constructed means that basically your society, your culture teaches you what's right and what's wrong. Does that make sense? And it's really hard to argue that that's not really the case because, all of us heard what's right and wrong from somewhere, right? It's not like many of us sat there, as Plato would, outside and meditated for hours on end and just sort of worked your way through what is the right thing to do and what is the wrong thing to do based on first principles. Most of us don't have a mind to do that. So generally our parents just tell us what's right and wrong, and then it gets either challenged or reinforced by our friends and TV. And the other idea is that it's determined by evolution, which I'll come back to in a little bit, but that's like the idea that there's sort of like an instinct in us based on some sort of herd mentality we inherited from our evolutionary history. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay. All right, and then what do atheists believe about people?
Evolution. That we're the master race. Humanism.
Yes, we're the master race. That's awesome. Christians believe that too, because we're the last thing God made. Anyhow, they believe that humans are physical only. There's not some sort of spiritual component to humans. We're all physical. We're electro-mechanical machines. Carbon, yeah. Carbon, baby. Here's a famous atheist, Richard Dawkins, in his book, The Selfish Gene. He says, "We are robot vehicles blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes." That's what humans are. All right. Pantheism. Pantheism. What do pantheists believe about God? Does anybody want to take a stab at that?
Everything is God.
Yes.
Everyone is
God is everything,
God. God's everything.
and everything is God. Right? We can say it either way. Right? So we're all part of God. God is part of us. This podium is God. I am God. You're God. And we all belong to the same God reality. It's a failure to distinguish between God and reality. God and reality are collapsed into being the same thing. And so, basically we could write here, no distinction between creator and creation, right? God is creation. God is a creator. We're all part of the same reality. Pantheism usually strikes people from our culture, America. It usually strikes us as very strange. Okay, but there are so many Americans that are so into New Age religion, which is like kind of interesting, isn't it? But it's not like a small little sect of people that believe this way. There's like a ton of people, probably over 1 billion people that believe this way. All right, so it's not some weird little small thing. It's actually a big movement. And Chad explains it more, but
Unitarian Universalist.
what's that?
Unitarian Universalist.
I don't know if I would put them in it or not. Probably some of them are pantheists. All right, what about the next one here, epistemology? Where do pantheists get knowledge from? The answers are not outside of yourself, they're within yourself. How do you achieve enlightenment? It's through meditation, not through the scientific method, you idiot. Scientific method's just going to give you more theories that you're unsure of. What you need to do is meditate, look within. You can't trust the senses, and you can achieve enlightenment by meditation. Focus on the space between your thoughts. Evil, good, morals, it's an illusion. Evil is an illusion. The path towards enlightenment is to eliminate attachment. If you can eliminate your attachment to the things that you're attached to the things that you care about, then when bad things happen, it won't mess with you. You'll be fine because you won't have to worry about that because you've already eliminated those attachments. What are people? People are really spiritual only. The physical is an illusion. The physical is not real. The spiritual is real. Physical is a deception. It tricks you into thinking that true reality is physical reality, but it's really not. You see that atheism and pantheism are really not, they don't really agree on very much, right? And so you don't find too many Hindu atheists, right? Or people from that point of view. All right, so theism, what do theists believe about God?
God is real.
Yeah. One or more gods, or you could say capital G God, and they're apart from nature. If God is the spring that bubbles up with water, we're back into pantheism. God has to be apart from nature to be talking about theism. All right? So the word theism actually means belief in God. But it can be more than one God, right? There are two typical kinds of theism, right? You have mono and poly. Monotheism is belief in what? One God. Polytheism is a belief in multiple gods, okay? So there are different kinds of theism, like ancient Greek mythology where they believed in Zeus and Apollo and all those ancient gods, right? That's theism. So that would fit over here. Judaism fits over here. Islam fits over here. Mormons fit over here. A lot of religions fit in this category. Pantheism is this word pan, which means everything or all. It means everything is God. Atheism is no belief in God. Okay? So they all have theism in it. I don't know if you noticed that before. But this one is no belief in God. This is belief everything is God. And this is belief in God. Could be one or many, but it's belief in some sort of God or gods. All right, so what about ontology? What do theists believe about the universe?
Governed by God,
What's that?
controlled by God.
Okay. So that God interacts with it, right? God's separate from it. What about the business about physical or spiritual? Both, right? So I think what I want to write here is you have physical and spiritual. You know, we could say made in China. No, made by God or gods. That's supposed to say gods. So like certain other religions, like especially old school religions, they believe that the gods had a big fight and then the universe was the result of that. Christianity, obviously, from the book of Genesis, teaches in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, right? Islam teaches that as well. So it's the idea that God made the universe, so the spiritual was there first and then the physical, right? But both aspects exist in the same world. You know what I mean? What do theists believe about knowledge? How do you get knowledge? How do you learn things?
Science and revelation technology.
Yes. So it's taking both. It's taking both. You can use a scientific method and believe in God. That's fine. In fact, everyone that invented the scientific method was a theist. So they weren't atheists. And revelation is the idea that God or spirits, or could even be an angel, can speak to you or reveal something to you, right? And so it's not looking within for meditation, it's looking without, but it could involve meditation, could involve prayer, and that God would then reveal something to you. So it's both knowledge using your senses and knowledge through the spirit or supernatural realm. How about morality?
System of reward and punishments.
There's a standard set, well, at least within the Christian view, set by God. In the Muslim, Christian, Muslim, Jewish view, set by God. Some other forms of theism probably wouldn't agree with that, but that would be maybe a side topic. And then humanity is both physical and spiritual. That we are not solely biomechanical machines whose purpose is to reproduce. But there is actually some sort of spiritual component to us or aspect to us that enables us to connect with God and with each other on a more spiritual level.
What does spiritual mean in this case?
I'm trying to be as vague as possible because we're dealing with all different forms, okay, of, theisms. It could mean different things in different situations. All right, so what I want to do now with you in our time that remains is, actually, let me ask you this. Do you have any questions on these three categories, atheism, pantheism, or theism?
Do you think it's possible for atheists to have an objective set of morals? Because I think, I don't know if you've heard of objectivism.
What, Ayn Rand? Yeah. Yeah.
Or like belief that, things are permissible unless it hurts somebody else or...
I enjoyed Atlas Shrugged. I went to I don't know, you say it Ayn or Ann?
I say Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand.
Atlas Shrugged, the first chapter of this book reminded me of Atlas Shrugged. Just the A is A, blah, blah,
Yeah.
And I just, I wonder, because dealing with, I used to be on this whole Atlas Shrugged blog thing with people who are atheists.
What's that got?
Blog, an Atlas Shrugged blog.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, like, with a lot
Did you
of
see the movie?
Yeah, the movie is horrible. Yeah, I love the book, the movie is horrible. I was so first too. But there's a lot of atheists in there, and a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of them, they would say, like, no, atheists are moral people too, and they do have objective views and morals, and basically it would be like, it's permissible if it's not hurting somebody else or taking away the rights of somebody else.
Yeah. I think an atheist can definitely have objective morals. The issue comes in why they choose to ground those objective moral, or what they choose to ground them in. Okay, you can say it's wrong to hurt people. Okay, you could say that, but like, I'm going to come back. So let's say we're both atheists, right? Just for a second here. You're going to say to me, Sean, it's wrong to hurt people, and I'm going to say, well, why, Denise? Why is it wrong? There's no God to hold me accountable. I'm evolutionarily determined to survive and be the fittest and pass on my genetic material to as many people as possible. Why can't I hurt people? If it brings me joy, why shouldn't I be able to hurt people? If I can get away with it, why can't I hurt people? Those people are weaker than me. I should eliminate them. I just don't see how you can have an objective, you're going to come back and be like, well, you're a psycho. And be like, well, maybe I'm the enlightened one and you're the psycho. Nobody's standing on anything. We're both flopping around in the air. And, it's just like arguing. It's not really, there's no ground to stand on, you could say, as soon as you say should or ought within an atheist paradigm, we have to say why. And there is no God at the end to say, well, it's because God says so. There's none of that. So, I don't know. I guess that's what I would say. Objectivism as a philosophy also fails in one other area, which is compassion. For people who are limited, people who have limitations. The objectivist framework works great if you're a capitalist and you're born with an equal shot at achieving your own potential. But if you're born into the ghetto and you have no opportunity to get out of that situation, you don't really want to be an objectivist. You know what I mean? What you want is somebody to help you out and be like, hey, I'll give you a full ride to this college over here and give you a shot, you know? Whereas an objectivist would say, no, it's just strictly based on grades regardless. So, I don't know. I'm not trying to advocate a social policy, but I am saying that, you know, I think there is a lack there. I went to an objectivist lecture at RPI when I was there, and the guy was so coarse, so rude, that I've never seen anything like this before, but everyone left the lecture one at a time. You know, and he's up there, and he's just going on, and like one person, you know, we'd have like Muslims in the full headdress, Muslim women attending, and we have like Jewish women, Christians, all different atheists, and people would just like be like, this is crazy. They wouldn't say anything; they would just leave, and like eventually the whole room emptied over the course of the hour. He was so caustic and abrasive. What's that? I mean, I was with a group. I wasn't gonna like be like, hey guys, I want to stay around. You know, it was like, I mean, we stayed for a while. You know, but he was just rude. He was like, you know how we solve terrorism? I'll tell you how we solve terrorism. We get those terrorists. We tell them, you all want to die for your God? Fine. You all show up to this building at this time. We'll blow it up. You'll die for your God. Problem solved. And everyone's like, are you what? You know, so maybe he was a bad advocate. I did enjoy at least a good part of the I think she has a point. I'm not against her whole thing, but whatever, we're getting off topic. It's okay. Any other questions about these? Do these three make sense at least? A little bit? Okay, you see how we're like chunking religions into these three categories? All right, so now what I want to do is go through them and offer some criticisms. All right, these are not criticisms, those are explanations. All right, so this is another Richard Dawkins quote. Whose turn is it to read?
No idea.
I think we're at Melvin. Melvin, could you read this?
In a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect. If there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music.
That's Richard Dawkins, River Out of Eden. So he's saying, look, the world stinks. It's a cold, dark place. Oh, well, it's just the way it is. We're all little robots programmed to reproduce, and the DNA really has already wired us to do certain things, and we're just dancing to its music. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And so that's an atheist describing the whole issue of right and wrong and morality. And even just reading those words, it almost like refutes itself. I hardly have to say anything to convince you that that is that's like a nightmare. It's horribly wrong, right? But let's go ahead and do it anyhow. The issue with an atheist morality is, like I was talking to Denise a second ago, the ground for saying something is right or wrong. Okay, and so essentially there's nothing objective here. A good example conversation is say you're talking to an atheist friend, and they're like, you know, I don't think there really is right and wrong, and you Christians think you have everything figured out, but we're just advanced animals, man. And you'd be like, all right, hold on, Mr. Atheist, let me ask you a question. Do you think the Catholic Inquisition was wrong? Do you think it's wrong to torture people because of their beliefs? And they'll be like, yeah, that's wrong. Why is it wrong? Well, you shouldn't hurt other people. You shouldn't force other people to believe something just because you're more powerful or you have more weapons. Why is that wrong, Mr. Atheist? Because it's wrong. I said it's wrong. Who are you to make declarations about what's right and wrong for all of the human race? You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard to do it. And you know what the truth is? Why that person thinks it's wrong? It's because they've inherited an ethic from the culture that relates to Christianity. I don't know if you know this, but Christians have been the big show for a long time in this part of the world. And still in the South, Christianity is the big show. But there's a culture that's just out there that is wrong to do certain things, and that's based on old ideas that are traced back to Jesus and his teachings, and maybe some teachings before that as well. But consider this for a moment: the virtue of love. The Romans considered it. There were Roman when Christianity was starting to take over the Roman Empire and really make a big majority of the Romans Christians. Some Romans started complaining. They're like, you know what the problem with this Christian stuff is? It's too sissy. All this mercy and love of people, it's taking the manliness out of our culture, and that's what's wrong with Rome. It's these stupid Christians and their sissy morals, right? People wouldn't say that today. If you say, you should be compassionate to people are not going to be like, why? They're going to be like, yeah, you're right, I should. Compassion's great. Everybody knows that, right? So these things that are out there in the culture are traceable to somewhere. You know what I mean? And they depend on something. Like I mentioned before in my dialogue here, the idea that morals come from society, basically what it does is it destroys any authority of those morals. Okay? Look, if your society believes that everyone should sleep naked at night, I don't know, I made that up, all right? I like to sleep with clothes on, for the record. But let's say that's what Ohioans believe, okay? And I'm sorry that you're on the couch in there. No, I'm just kidding. But he's in a different apartment. But anyhow, if that's what they believe, and then there's the rest of us, and we're like, hey, that's crazy, because what if something happens? You have to get up and go do something. Yeah, or you die in your sleep, and that would be awkward. So, how do you prove that moral is correct? You don't really prove it. You're just like, this is what we do. This is what we believe. This is what our society... If it's socially constructive, there's no authority to that idea. But if it really is wrong, if it's objectively wrong, then there has to be a source, a reason, something behind why it actually is wrong. And atheism does not give you that. There's no ground. We're not standing anywhere. We're floating. And it's like the sawing off of the limb that you're sitting on.
I think you made a good argument. I think it was in the Link book about if our morals are determined by evolution, then why is it wrong to, is abortion wrong? Because he was speaking to somebody who was an atheist but a doctor, and he said, well, yes, I believe abortion's wrong because I believe, well, if our morals are evolutionary, then you would want to, it would be like survival of your species. You would want to abort babies who have defects or things like that. Why can't we kill off people who are defective?
Yeah.
If it's based on the survival of our species, evolutionarily, we would want to get rid of people who are defective, but yet, the atheists still say, well, it's wrong. It's wrong to kill those people. So
they're not being consistent with their own beliefs. Yeah, exactly. On atheism, you should sterilize all handicapped or defective people, which is just horrifying. You sound like a psychopath even just say that that's what would be consistent. And on atheism, you should probably rape, if you're a guy or a girl, whatever, you should rape as many people as you can, because if you can rape somebody and get away with it, it proves that you are the fittest and that your DNA should be passed on and that you should replicate yourself as many times as possible. What do we do with people that kill handicapped people and rape as many people as possible? What do we do with these people? What we do is we take them out of the population and we put them in jail because they're crazy. But if you're going to be consistent with atheism, that would not only be permissible, but morally obligatory, that sort of behavior. Yeah?
I was going to say, in order to say that the people that have those defects and whatnot should be killed, you have to define a right way of living or a right person or the strongest. You have to not only
Well, they would ground that in evolution. They would say whatever is superior,
Yeah.
whatever
What's
is,
superior.
whoever wins
Yeah.
the fight.
Stephen Hawking is known to be the world's smartest man. If
But if he,
took over, he wouldn't be living, and therefore, how
ergo.
who is the fittest in survival?
Right. Well, I vote for keeping Stephen Hawking alive, even if he defies God, because I have a different moral grounding. This is Ravi Zacharias. Anybody ever heard of him?
No? Yes.
He's an Indian guy who converted to Christianity, and he does talks all around the world. He has a Ravi Zacharias Center. I think it's part of Oxford in
There's a motto called
England.
believers to think, thinkers to believe.
Yeah, that's good.
Just
Yeah,
thinking or something publication?
yeah,
Something like that?
something like that. I don't remember. I read his book, Who Made God, in 2005. It was the text I used for this class for the first time I taught it. And I have a little video here of his where he's talking about this issue right here. No, sorry, this issue right here, the morals, axiology, morals, and dealing with the question that we've just been talking about. So I just want to play this video for you. Feel free to take notes if you want to, but I don't think anything's on the quiz from this. So.
Here's one more question. Sorry, people, right here. Dr. Zacharias, thank you very much for tonight. Your topic was, what if I don't need God? And then, if I understood you correctly, then your discussion was on the vacuity of life and the innate evil in man and the end and ruin and destruction of man if we don't believe in God. And Jesus said God wants those to worship Him in truth. Dallas would have taken that to the point of saying, are you willing to even die for truth is the ultimate thing to pursue. In the context of your talk, what if it's true then that man without God lives a life that leads to destruction? Does that make the gospel true? And does it make it wrong? In other words, is it not, you're self-referential in that you're saying man has an end, therefore the end should be peace. But what if man doesn't have an end and we're just animals at heart, and that's the end of man, and we need to come? So how do you answer the atheist who says that's just the truth? It's ugly. Where the insane man saying, who's to take responsibility? We are. How do we handle this? Could you just answer how do you respond to that personally, and what elicits that actual truth of the gospel?
Yeah, actually, my answer, I hope, was broader than that. It is the fact that the ideas of morality, the ideas of meaning, the ideas of hope, the idea of a destiny, none of them ultimately make sense in a naturalistic universe, especially the first two. So it is not so much the destiny, it is the very present. You know, here's something you and I need to remember time and time again, and so I want the audience to hear this clearly. Chesterton said this: meaninglessness does not come from being weary of pain. Meaninglessness comes from being weary of pleasure. Meaninglessness does not come from being weary of pain. Meaninglessness ultimately comes from being weary of pleasure. So whether it's pain that provokes the question of the existence of God, or pleasure that ultimately leaves you empty-handed and completely decimated, that there was no perpetual novelty in what you pursued in life, that ought to get the naturalist to ask the question, where am I actually headed? If even pleasure ultimately inoculates you from more and more meaning and leaves you more empty than before. So my answer is, you need God to even make sense out of the questions you ask, leave alone the answers. The question of morality, the question of meaning, and the question of hope. And these are meaningless questions in a purely deterministic, material, naturalistic universe. Why do we talk of good and evil if we are descendants from primordial slime? Why do we do that? It's because, a computer does not spell pain with the moral ramifications that you and I spell it. We have the moral ramifications of it. So I say that for the naturalist, even the questions ultimately don't make sense. Let me put it this way, and then we will close. Two illustrations of this. When I was in two university settings, let me go one was too much evil in this world, therefore he didn't believe in God. So I said, when you say there's evil, aren't you assuming that such a thing is good? He said, that is correct. I said, when you assume that such a thing is good, aren't you assuming that such a thing is a moral law on the basis of which you differentiate between good and evil? We went into a bit of interaction on that, and I sustained my point. He said, I'll grant you that. When you say there's evil, that such a thing is good. When you say such a thing is good, you assume that such a thing is a moral law on the basis of which you differentiate between good and evil. I said, if you assume that such a thing is a moral law, you must posit the moral lawgiver, but that's what we're trying to disprove and not prove. If there's no moral lawgiver, there's no moral law. If there's no moral law, there's no good. If there's no good, there's no evil. What is your question? He stood there and he looked at me and he said this, what then am I asking you? Now, there is a challenge here that I can't take time to elaborate on. Somebody here might say, wait a minute, I can grant you the first three, that there is evil, there must be good, there may be an absolute moral standard, but why does it have to take you to a person? My response to that is, the question of evil always is raised by a person or about a person, so personhood is intrinsic to the question. Which means the answer must have the value of personhood in it, and there's no way to gain the value of personhood unless we ourselves are endowed by intrinsic worth from a person of absolute truth. Otherwise the question is
All right, so what he's saying there is people want to ask the question, what about all this evil in the world? Right? That's something we're going to spend a whole lecture on later on this week. And he's saying, well, look, if there's evil in the world, then there's also got to be good. Otherwise, you wouldn't know the difference between good and evil. If everything was evil, then nothing would be evil, right? And so if there's evil, there's good. And he's like, well, if there's both good and evil in the world, then there's got to be some sort of standard by which you can tell the difference between something that's evil and something that's good. And he's like, that standard has to come from some sort of, moral being, or a lawgiver is the way he puts it, right? And he's like, but you're saying there isn't any moral being at the top of the chain. There isn't any God. So if there isn't any God, then there isn't any standard by which we can tell the difference between evil and good. So there isn't any good and there isn't any evil. What is it you're asking about? In other words, the very existence of evil points to the existence of God, which is a strange way of thinking about it, I realize. But the simple fact is, if there is an absolute standard, as opposed to just a relative standard that's true for someone but not true for someone else, then there has to be an absolute moral being at the top of it that generates that standard. Otherwise, that standard is not absolute. It's relative, which means you can have your own moral standard, which might include torturing kids for fun, and Melvin has his own moral standard, which might include eating ice cream for every meal.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I already have that moral standard.
You know, and people that don't eat ice cream with their meal are immoral people, according to Melvin. And if you don't torture children for fun, I don't know why you got that one, then Levi is going to call you an immoral person, right? So you can't have people just making up their own standards if there really is truly evil and good. If there really is evil and good, not just in we think it is, but if it really is, then there is some sort of absolute standard, and then that leads back to an absolute source. There's another argument, too, that's kind of cool. It's by a guy named Alvin and the Chipmunks. No, Alvin Plantinga. Has anybody ever heard of Alvin Plantinga? I don't know if Chad mentions him.
Plantinga what?
Plantinga. He's a philosopher. I don't know if he's still a professor at Notre Dame, but he was for a long time a very well-known professor at Notre Dame. And he developed an evolutionary argument against evolution. And it goes like this. Our mental faculties are the way they are because of evolution. That is, your mind works the way it works. You know, you're able to perceive the outside world. You can understand what I'm saying, at least some of the time. You know, that your mental faculties, they are the result of evolution, assuming evolution is true. They are the result of evolution. I don't know what that was, so we're just going to mute it. All right, so evolution functions on natural selection. So survivability was the determining factor in forming our mental faculties. So your mental faculties are based on evolution. Evolution works on natural selection. Natural selection is the whole idea of if something helps you survive, it's going to select for that thing. Therefore, what really determined how your brain works is how well you survive, not how well it coheres to the outside world. And so what he says is that there's no real reason why survivability and reality should coincide. In other words, mild paranoia is more helpful to keep you alive than the sort of brain you actually have, if you're in a hostile context, which allegedly early man was in, with predators and whatnot chasing after him. So, in other words, if evolution is true, then we shouldn't trust our mental faculties that they're accurately able to process reality. If that's true, then we can't know that evolution is true because our mental faculties generated the theory of evolution. And so that's, I don't know if you follow that or not, it's not on the quiz, but you can look it up. Alvin Plantinga's Evolutionary Argument Against Evolution. He wrote a whole scholarly paper that is way more complicated than what I just explained to you.
So there's nothing on paper about him? There's nothing on the test?
No. I free you from responsibility for studying Alvin Plantinga. But it is a pretty fascinating argument that is worthy of your consideration if you're interested in it. You know, I mean, I'm telling you certain things during this class that, you know, are things that you can follow up on later if you want. And then there's the core of what I'm doing as well. And I did not put the C.S. Lewis quote here. All right. C.S. Lewis said the following: whenever you find a man who says he does not believe in a real right and wrong, you will find the same man going back on this a moment later. He may break his promise to you, but if you try breaking one to him, he will be complaining, "It's not fair," before you can say Jack Robinson. I don't know who Jack Robinson was, but I didn't even source it. Man, I'm a slacker. Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, it definitely is. It's that whole part where he does the moral argument that I'm basically trying to do here to deal with this problem that atheism has. So anyhow, on each of these different worldviews, what Meister says is that we should do two tests on it. One is test the logic of it, and two is test the livability of it. Okay? And so what we want to do is analyze each based on logic and livability. And so with atheism, we have some logical issues when it comes to having not morals. Well, I guess we would say there would be a logical issue with saying that there are absolute morals with atheism. We would say morals are socially constructed or determined by evolution. Here's the problem. If morals are socially constructive, they're not authoritative, so you can do whatever you want. If it's determined by evolution, we lock you away in jail. So this worldview is not livable. It's not, you can't actually live by it, at least not in this society. Maybe you go to an island and be a true atheist and like beat everyone up. But that's that's.
I would love to live on an island.
Also protected in our society by objective laws that were based on Judeo-Christian.
There you go. All right, pantheism. Let's talk about pantheism a little bit here and offer some criticisms. All right, so if we are one with God, that's what pantheists believe, right? We're one with God, and God is the changeless all, then we, God, need to move beyond our ignorance and become enlightened by realizing our own divinity. But to come to know something is to change, and God can't change because he's the changeless all. So there's a logical contradiction at the heart of pantheism, this idea that God is everything. Let me say it another way for you. Can rocks think?
No.
Okay. But can God think? But God is a rock. You know what I'm saying? So like you can't have it both ways. Like either there is a consciousness or there isn't. And if there is, then the rock does think. But like, I can't think a rock thinks. That just seems preposterous. Rocks just sit there, or maybe they roll, or they smash when they're dropped out of a high.
Someone else has to do that.
Right. But they don't think. There's never been a case of any rock ever thinking, right?
Control my fever.
Maybe we just need to like listen closer, right? Meditate. I don't know. I'm trying not to make fun of it because I want to be respectful. But at the same time, I am trying to point out a criticism at the heart here. What were you going to say?
What if it's just, it is a part of God? Everything is God, but my bones don't think.
Okay. So let's say let's say that God is impersonal. That God's not personal, he's impersonal. The universe is impersonal. But I'm a person and I'm supposed to be the same as the universe. So again, we have a contradiction because you can't have persons and an impersonal reality be the same thing. You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't work logically.
Could they say that they have different aspects of God? You think?
That's not what they're saying.
Everything is equally God in the same way.
Yeah.
Would it be like Shinto or like native religions, like a spirit running through everything? Would those be considered pantheistic?
Yeah. A lot of, what do they call those? Folk religions or, there's like a word. You were asking a question? Animism? Animism, yeah. It's like the idea that everything's alive. Are you asking a question?
Making a comment.
Okay.
Um,
I just wasn't sure if you were stretching.
No, Ephesians, God is in all, through all, is all, that verse.
Yeah.
What do we do with that verse with pantheism?
Ephesians 4:6.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's do it.
There's one God and Father who is over all and through all and in all. I think that's a way of God saying that Paul saying that God is everywhere present. That God, I would argue through Spirit, is able to be in different places or have access to what's going on in different places. Oh,
It's probably talking about all people and not all things.
right.
Well, also, it's not saying that God is those things.
Right.
Over them, through
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
in them, but he is not them. That's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that God is aware, of, what's going on Jupiter's moon, even though there's no people there. I think, he probably still knows what's going on over there. Like if there's a storm or, a meteor coming. He's like, yeah, I see that meteor. It's coming. Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and also, if the Bible makes it clear that, for example, we're not God.
Right.
Yahweh
Yeah.
is God. We
Yeah.
get to Him, and so.
Yeah. There's this text here. There's one God, right? And there's one mediator between God and men, the man Christ Jesus. So that's theism though. That's not pantheism. Let me say a couple other things here. Look at page 63 in Building Belief with me. This is, I don't know, even Denise might not have gotten this far. I don't know. But there's this part where Chad is talking to this Buddhist woman, student or something. All right. It's kind of down a little bit, in the middle. We'll start with the second paragraph there. You see where I'm at? I decided. Everybody there? Dan, could you read paragraph?
I decided to test her position and determine its livability. My wife and I had been cooking dinner for the evening, and Margaretna was sitting at the kitchen table. On the stove was a pan of boiling water, and just before I added the spaghetti noodles, a thought came to mind. I sent her, Margaretna, with the pantheistic worldview, everything is God, right?
Go ahead, Jamie.
How much do you want me to read?
Let's do 3. They're so short.
Okay. Yes, she said, everything is God and everything is one. There are no distinctions. But if there are no distinctions, I said, then there is ultimately no right and wrong, no distinction between cruelty and non-cruelty, or between good and evil, correct? Yes, she confirmed, there are no ultimate rights and wrongs, goods and evils.
Next up, Sierra.
But as took the boiling water off the stove and held it over her head, pretending as though I would spill it on top of her. Are you sure there are no right and wrongs, no distinctions between good and evil, cruelty and non-cruelty? I asked. Her sharp mind was racing. I could almost see the wheels spinning. Well, she said, I guess maybe there is a distinction between these things.
Jesse, take us home.
The point of the story, of course, is that we can say there are no distinctions between good and evil, and there are no rights and wrongs, that suffering is a mere illusion, and that cruelty is not morally distinct from non-cruelty. But we do not really live that way. We live as if there are truly moral absolutes. Now, does this not prove that there are, but it does demonstrate that those who hold to the atheistic worldview or pantheistic worldview cannot consistently believe in the real right and wrong. They must borrow what they hold to be true from theism.
Okay, so this is a conversation that he had where he kind of exposes the contradiction in that system. Oh, here's another question for pantheism. On the subject of ontology, there's no distinction between creature and creator. There's no distinction actually between all of us. We're all part of the same reality, right? If that's true, pick a number between 1 and 10. 7. Oh, don't say it.
Okay.
Pick a number between 1 and 100.
Okay.
All right, is it 52?
No.
Why can't I read her mind if we're all part of the same reality?
We have different.
What was it? 53.
We're almost the same.
Hold on. I'm going to go meditate and I'll be right back.
I was thinking 53 and a half.
Because they're all different people.
Yeah.
Have different.
We have our own heads, right? Different minds. And so, but they're saying that's an illusion. We're all part of the same reality. But if we're all are part of the same reality, we should be able to read each other's minds. Doesn't that make perfect sense? And even their most experienced yogis and gurus are not able to perform the simplest of mind reading exercises. You know? It's not even a thing they do. It's not even on TV. If it's not on TV, it can't exist, right? Okay. All right. Pantheism. It's not livable for the morality, like the example of the boiling water over the girl's head. Like, you can't live that way. You can't just go around saying there's no difference between good and evil. Like, if somebody hurts my kids, like, I can't just be like, oh, it doesn't matter. There's no good and evil. I'm just going to go in the closet and meditate for a little while until I can detach myself from my affection for them. I'm sorry, but that's not livable. You know, they need me to care about them. And who knows what they'll turn out to be if I actually was consistent in living this way. The kid's crying, the kid's in trouble, but I'm just going to go meditate because, you know, I'm part of the same reality.
The kid needs to meditate. So
Yeah.
They can detach themselves.
Okay, what else? Your body is not physical, it's just an illusion. Well, boy, it sure does seem that my body does affect my mind. You know what I mean? And that, you know, the things, hangry is actually a word in the dictionary now. You're so hungry, you're angry. Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, our bodies do affect our minds. Have you ever been really tired and suddenly it was hard to think, or like you started repeating yourself? Or you ever work really, really hard and then like at the end of the day, you're still working, doing something. Like I was putting in wood floors recently. And like by the end of the day, you start making mistakes because like you're just like, everything's getting tired. You're getting tired of bending over, tired of like measuring and cutting things, or whatever example you can think from your own life. It seems like our bodies do affect the real us, don't they? And like if you drink a lot of coffee and then put hot chocolate in it, and then eat a donut, you experience a mental sensation, right? It's not, you know, it's almost like your physical body does affect you. It's almost as if it's part of you, right? And so that would contradict the anthropology of pantheism.
So one of the arguments from the atheist in his opening remarks was that
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so what about theism? Are there criticisms of theism? Yes, there are. There are criticisms of every worldview. It's not like there are 3 worldviews because like a bunch of the world's dumb and we are just the smart ones. It's not actually that way. There are good criticisms of each of the different views, and that's why we're here. We wouldn't have a whole class on it if it was just obvious, right? And so what are the criticisms of theism? Well, one is on this whole issue of axiology or ethics or morals. Well, actually might not be on that. Maybe it'd be somewhere in between these two, is what I call the PEA. No, not the PEA. PEA. POE, sorry. That's way off. Problem of evil. You've heard me refer to this a couple of times already, but it's the idea that if God is so powerful and God is so good, then why does he allow so much evil in our world, especially senseless suffering? You know what I mean? So that's a common criticism of theism. Another one is that we don't have a way to physically prove God exists, right? We don't have some sort of experiment we can do that definitively shows, using the scientific method, that God exists, right? At least there's none that people have tried. They've done a prayer experiment, where they get people to pray, and then they get even atheists to pray and to see what the differences are and all this sort of thing. And it just doesn't pan out as some sort of solid evidence that it is exactly this or that. Okay. Here's another criticism about epistemology, right? This idea that people get revelation from God. Did anybody get a little I don't know about that one? Yeah, what do you do with wackos that say God told them to kill their kids? What do you do with those people, right? What do you do with Abraham, right? Or how about the Euthyphro dilemma? Euthyphro dilemma. The Euthyphro dilemma is this. It's from I think one of Plato's dialogues. Some philosopher was wrestling with this way back in the day. But the question is, is something wrong because God says it's wrong, or is it wrong and that's why God says don't do it? And if it's wrong because if it's wrong anyhow and that's why God says don't do it, then you don't really need God to determine morals. They're already out there. He's just telling you what they are. So God has nothing to do with the morals. They just exist. So you don't need God. Or the other way, it's only wrong because God says it's wrong. That makes it sound like God's just arbitrarily commanding certain things to be wrong, right? And that's the Euthyphro dilemma, and trying to figure out which way do you go with that. And we might come to I think I totally spelled dilemma wrong. That was dilemma. Dilemma. Yeah.
Would another argument be all the multiple theistic views pertaining to God? That there's no definite one that seems to be the right one.
Oh yeah, that's a Peter Milligan argument, right? He's like, look, I don't believe in Zeus or the Tooth Fairy or, Artemis. Neither do you. So you're atheist with respect to all these other gods. I just believe in one less God than you. I don't believe in Yahweh either, and you do. And so why would we believe in any of those other gods? What makes this any different? So yeah, there are criticisms against theism too. I don't want to make the case like this theism is just a slam dunk. It might seem like that to us because we are insiders to that worldview, and obviously we have bias and we prefer that worldview. But yeah, there are valid criticisms, and it is our task in this class to be able to come up with answers for the hope that lies within us with gentleness and respect. So we are going to be dealing with some of those things. the atheism and the pantheism, I'm not really going to spend a lot of time disproving other people's beliefs. Instead, what I'm going to focus our time on as we go forward here is proving our beliefs. You know what I mean? Because, look, if you can show somebody that the Bible is true, you've got it. You're done. There's nothing else to talk about. The only thing else there is to talk about is what does the Bible say? What does it mean about this or that, right? So instead of trying to disprove this, and this, or be like, those Mormons are wrong because we don't have any good archaeological finds of Native Americans waging massive wars, and there weren't horses in America yet, and they sure didn't have those advanced metallurgy swords forged yet. You don't have to go into all that. You just be like, look, this is what this says here. And then they have to either, that's where it brings the conversation. Does that make sense? No, Sean, that's crazy. That's just totally crazy. Oh, that's a good point there. That's a good point. All right, so let's just do a little review. Yeah, the one that has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on it. All right, so we've talked about reasons to defend the faith, right? I gave you 4 reasons to defend the faith. The Bible commands us to defend the faith. It's good to build your own faith. It's good to help other people. And a lot of times you can't even do evangelism with an unbeliever unless you first handle some of these objections that they're going to bring up. And they're going to bring up other objections, like, what about the Crusades, man? What about the Inquisition? What about the Salem witch hunt? They're going to bring up those kinds of things as well. And I meant to say this before. I don't know everything. I don't know if you knew that already. I think you did, right? I've worked on this for a while, and I know certain answers to certain things, and I know a lot of other places where I can look and find answers to things. But it's totally normal for me to say to somebody, I have no idea how to answer you on this. Let me get back to you. And that's what you should always do rather than making something up. Unless you know what you're talking about. If you have a take on something, by all means share it with your friend. But if they're like, I don't believe because why did this happen or why did that happen? And if you really don't have an answer, just be like, look, man, I gotta research that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let me get back to you. What's your number? Or let's hook up on Facebook or whatever, however you want to communicate with that person so that you can come back with a good answer. There's nothing worse than giving just a pathetic answer that doesn't make any sense. And then the person going away being like, I knew Christianity was a joke. You don't want to do that. You know what I mean? So if you don't know, you just say you don't know. None of us knows everything. Not even close. So those are the reasons to defend the faith, why we do apologetics. On the subject of what is truth, we talked about objective truths versus subjective truths. Somebody want to tell me the difference between those two?
Objective is fact no matter what, and subjective is based on the person.
Okay, very good. Did you hear that in the back? Okay, good. So what about, how do you go about showing somebody, let's say somebody says, Christianity is good for you, but I prefer Sikhism. Uh-huh. What's that?
I thought you were done. That's in the law of non-contradiction.
Okay. Could you explain that?
That, yes, A does not equal what's not A, therefore they can't both be true.
Uh-huh.
Since they are, one is
What
Christianity, one is Sikhism,
what is the A of Christianity?
the resurrection.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. The resurrection. So if Jesus really was resurrected from the dead, then he really is the Messiah. He really is the one God sent to save us, right? And what did Jesus say? Jesus said, no one comes to the Father except through me. Right? So this whole A business, this is all Jesus. This isn't our fault. He's the one that said it, right? And so there's not really room for it to be true and then like have some other like back door over here where it's like, oh yeah, that's okay too. No, he said he's the only way to the Father. And so either we're on board with Jesus or we're gonna say, well, you know, he had a burrito that day and he didn't usually eat Mexican food and his stomach was upset and he was a little off his game and, you know, he exaggerated a little bit. I mean, look, if you're going to do that, then, you know, we've kind of lost Jesus in the midst of all of your efforts to tame him. You have to let him be who he is. And he said, he's the way to the Father, the only way to the Father, right? So that's our A. So if that's true, then the Siddhartha Gautama, who was a great guy, did a great thing. He gave up his wealth and his palace, and he followed the Eightfold Path, and he was able to meditate and achieve enlightenment to some degree. That's all great. But you know what? As far as salvation goes, that doesn't help, right? Muhammad, who taught monotheism, which is something we believe in as well. He fought against idolatry. He went and he conquered Mecca, and he tried to establish this truth that there's only one God. And you know, that's nice. But like, what about salvation? What about dealing with our sins, our crimes against God? I don't think it works, their system of saying God's going to put all your bad deeds on your left shoulder and all your good deeds on your right shoulder, and whichever way is heavier is the way you're going to go. You know what I mean? Justice just doesn't work that way. Look, if you kill my mother, but then like you do a lot of good things the rest of your life, I don't care, you still killed my mom. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make the bad things you've done go away just because you do a bunch of good things. I don't care if you give blood, you know, 1,000,000 times in your life. You killed my mom. So bad deeds, good deeds don't make bad deeds go away. You need a savior. You need something to deal with that sin issue. And I think Christianity is such a strong answer to that. And then in this lecture, we looked at theism, atheism, and pantheism. And these are not religions, but categories, worldviews, ways of thinking about the world and about people and about what's right and wrong. And we can see the different positions and different critiques against these positions. But in the end, how we're going to proceed is we're going to look at positive arguments for this category over here, and in particular for Christianity. So you can see in the outline there, tomorrow we're going to work on arguments for God's existence. We're going to do 2 whole lectures on arguments for God's existence. And then we're going to look at the historical Jesus. And what I mean by that is that Jesus was an actual person that lived, as opposed to just like something somebody wrote about, you know, some fiction. He was an actual historical person. So that's tomorrow. And then we're going to get into the resurrection. We're going to do 2 lectures on the resurrection. Bill Craig's going to go first, and then me. And then after that, we're going to do 2 on the Old Testament, 2 on the New Testament, and then handle 3 objections and show you, some ways of thinking about those things. There are lots of objections, and I always wonder which ones I should do. I always do the problem of evil because it's so common. But the last 2 I just changed up for this class. I do different ones basically every time. And if you have an objection that is burning in your soul and that you're dying for me to address, and if I have anything to say about it, I'll definitely address it and bring. But you have to let me know, okay? So, and you all have my email address, right? KingdomUprising.com. So that's good. So you can email me or talk to me. Let's do the quiz, and looks like we're going to get out a little early today. How about that?
Quiz this time, right?
Working on it. Yeah. That's.
Ignore the last one.
Are there 5 or are there 6?
I see 5.
Okay, so if there are only 5, then what number is that?
The second one.
Number 7 would be the extra one.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, just cross off number 7. It's an extra number. Maybe we should make up a new question for that one.
You could say explain in detail Alan Contino's evolutionary theory.
That would be very funny.
It would be very mean.
I have a video of Alvin Planting explaining it, and yeah, that was quick.
Not making these hard enough.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know if I said that to you guys. My job here is not to ruin your life. You know,